Minnesota program. My guest in studio is Steve Pahs, who's the district manager for the Rice County Soil and Water Conservation District. And Steve, welcome to the program again.
Thank you. Good morning.
It's not like you're a newbie to AM Minnesota.
It's been a little while, but yeah, I've done it a few times. So.
And all right, let's tell the story. I got an email from Steve. He was pretty excited about some new program he wanted to come on AM Minnesota and talk about. And he said, "Okay, Jerry, how many donuts does it take to get on AM Minnesota?" You know us pretty well, don't you, Steve?
Absolutely. You got to make sure you pay the fee.
Yeah, all kidding, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, why don't you explain first, Steve, kind of what you do, and the rest of your staff out there. Is virtually every county in the state of Minnesota has a local soil and water conservation district, right?
Sure, yep. The soil and water districts are locally driven by elected officials who oversee the operations of the district. So it's a real grassroots organization that works primarily with the agricultural sector to address soil erosion, water quality, flood mitigation, those kinds of things. If you get into the urban areas, they're much more into the urban conservation, construction site erosion control, that sort of thing.
That's what's really neat about it, because the district directors that are elected by each county, they have some authority in terms of setting priorities. And if you're in a rural area, priorities are different than if you're like in Dakota County, for example, where they have so much more urban, and maybe stormwater runoff or parking lot runoff off of asphalt is a whole lot different than it would be in Rice County or Goodhue County.
Yep, that's one of the nice things about the organization, is that we do have that flexibility to tailor our needs to the community.
And some of the funding comes from, like, through the USDA, the Farm Bill, and some comes through the state, or how does all that work?
The majority of districts are funded by the counties, and then the state of Minnesota also does a fair amount of funding, a lot of grant money that comes through the state.
And we have how many district directors in each county?
One.
Oh, you're the district director. How many board members?
Oh, board members, sorry. There's five typically. There's maybe a couple of counties that have seven with large populations, but.
And when we go and I vote every 2 years, let's see, every once in a while, oh, I know those people, but a lot of folks maybe don't pay a lot of attention to some of those elections, like district board, some of those kinds of things.
Yeah, they're usually the last on the ballot, and this is an election year, so you will see some district supervisors up for election. And for the most part, if you go to your county district's website, you'll be able to find information on the candidates.
In a couple minutes, we have to take a break for the markets, but Steve, you wanted to talk about a new program. Let's kind of intro that. We want to talk about that, and if we have time, wanted to get in a little bit on buffer strips too, because I would expect that you and the rest of the staff out there are a little involved in Governor Dayton's buffer initiative too, aren't you?
Very much involved, and we can't go anywhere without talking buffers these days, so we'll be happy to talk about that.
But first, let's talk about this new program that you mentioned.
The Minnesota Agricultural Water Quality Certification Program is something that's new through the Department of Agriculture, and the Soil and Water Conservation Districts are out there to be kind of the first ones to get the applications in, get people that are interested in the program signed up.
So this is something brand new.
It's very new. It's been around for about a year. They tried it in a few pilot areas in the state last year, and then just recently they expanded it statewide. Looking
at the pamphlet you brought in, I think someone that is certified, they have a sign that they can put like at the end of the driveway. Reminds me a little bit of the River Friendly Farmer program.
It's very similar to that. I think one of the main benefits of the program is that if you obtain certification, you are essentially exempt from regulatory changes in the laws for a period of 10 years. So that's kind of a nice plus.
The other thing I liked about the River Friendly Farmer program is you could put that up at the end of your driveway, and it portrayed a very positive image to the non-farming or landowning public about we're doing a good job. And so this kind of goes along with that too, but maybe has some extra benefits.
Yeah, we'll get into that too, and all those other benefits it has.
Well, it's a good thing you're watching the clock because we do have a market update coming. Never good when the farm guy misses a market. So let's check out the market update from Brownfield, sponsored by the Canadian Holiday Bell Plain, also Osage in Northwood, Iowa. My guest in the program today is District Manager Steve Pahs with the Rice County Soil and Water Conservation District. Steve, before the break, you briefly introduced the Minnesota Agriculture Water Quality Certification Program, and it kind of reminded me of the River Friendly Farmer Program, only maybe it sounds a little bit more extensive than that.
It is more extensive. I wish they had come up with a better name, because it doesn't have a nice acronym that we can use. Uh, it's kind of a mouthful to say, but yeah, it is very similar in some ways to the River Friendly Farmer Program, and in that you're certified for your operation as being environmentally responsible.
Okay, so you mentioned that this was sponsored or kind of brought to the forefront by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and then each county soil and water conservation district is kind of in charge of implementing it or administrating it or working with the landowners that want to be certified. That's kind of how it's going to work.
We're basically tasked with trying to find those who are interested in applying for the program, and then from that point on, we basically turn it over to a specialist that knows the program inside and out, and will come out to your farm, go through your operation in great detail, and determine whether or not you qualify. And if there are some areas that aren't quite up to speed, can make recommendations on how to get certified.
Well, then it's a natural fit because maybe you come out and, gee, I have this little gully here once in a while when we get in. Well, guess what? You also have people at your staff then, if you do find those, quote, weak spots, then we can work on them.
Absolutely. And no operation is perfect, and the program recognizes that. So even you can still obtain certification even though there may be some work that's still needed on your farm. And one of the other benefits that I wanted to mention to this program is that if you become certified, if you want to apply for the Federal Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, through the NRCS, you get to apply for a special pot of money that's only available to those who are certified in this program.
Oh, so if you do find an issue that needs addressing, then you can work with the Tom Coughlins of the world, the NRCS,
Yep.
maybe get you into EQIP to address whatever issue you have found on your farm.
Yeah, and the EQIP program is somewhat competitive. There's always limited funds. So being able to go after a pool of money that's only available to those that are certified greatly increases your odds of getting funding.
So you've been talking about it with some landowners a little bit, I assume, Steve, are they pretty excited about it? Lots of people are going to want to participate and see if they do qualify, and maybe find out if they don't, what they can do to fix it.
Yeah, we've really just gotten started, so I don't know the level of interest yet. I'm hoping that it's positive and that there's a lot of folks wanting to participate. But today's program is really one of the first opportunities to get the word out. So those of you out there that want to look into this, please stop into your local soil and water district.
Okay, so how's it going to work then, Steve? I'm going to give you a call and say, can I come in at some point and talk about the Minnesota Agriculture Water Quality Certification Program? That's kind of how it's all going to start, right?
That's how it starts. There is an application that you fill out, and the next step in the process is the assessment, and that's where the certified specialist comes out. And
so somebody from each office then is going to work with this program almost exclusively, would set up an appointment to come out and look at your operation and your practices.
Sort of. There's only we have there's 3 certified specialists in the southeast part of the state, and so it's not going to be a district staff person. It's going to be somebody that's trained just for this program to implement, that will come out to your farm.
So you start with your local soil and water conservation district, then an appointment is set up with one of these specialists, for lack of a better term, I guess.
Yep.
And then they would come out, and how does it work from there then?
Like I said, they go through the assessment of the operation, find out, if there's any deficiencies. They look at things like the physical field characteristics, nutrient management, tillage management, pest management, um, irrigation and tile drainage management, and conservation practices. And you have to meet a certain level of standard to meet that certification.
But the beauty is, if you do find some weaknesses, most landowners want to fix that too. I mean, that's our most valuable asset is our soil. So now what can we do? And what a great idea then to have a separate pot of money, cost share under the EQIP program designated just for farmers or landowners that want to do this to fix those or address those issues.
Absolutely, and I didn't say it yet, but the other part going with that is that you'll receive a higher cost share rate with this pot of money than you would with the traditional EQIP general sign up of funds.
Well, here's the beauty, of my opinion, my personal opinion now, of how society is supposed to work together. Individual landowners trying to do their share, but sometimes some of these things are expensive. Well, all citizens have an interest in having clean lakes and clean rivers, so they kind of help out too, and we work together to address an issue.
Yeah, that's why, there's multiple benefits to doing conservation on your land. It's not just affecting your operation, although the long-term stability of farms in Minnesota is really important for a whole lot of reasons, economics and,
Kind of hard to grow a good crop when you've lost most of your topsoil.
Absolutely.
Or all you have is clay that's left.
Yeah, and we've actually been seeing some soils in the county that are degraded that much that we are seeing reductions in yield. And as you lose that topsoil, your soil becomes more erosive because it doesn't have those glues to hold things together, and so it is a big issue.
So someone then comes out to the farm and you kind of fill out this application, and if you meet the standards, then you get this nice plaque to put at the end of the driveway.
Yep, you get the certification comes with the sign. It shows that you're a certified farmer, and then as I mentioned, you also become I don't know if you want to say immune, but if there's additional regulation changes in the next 10 years on the state level, you don't have to adopt those standards on your farm for that period of 10 years if you're certified already. So it kind of gives you a little protection from new laws that come about.
Kind of a little carrot and a stick there to try and do the best you can right now, so then maybe you don't need to worry about some other new rule or regulation coming down the road.
That's exactly what it's designed to do, yeah.
So was this kind of an initiative that came from the Minnesota legislature through the Department of Agriculture, or did the Department of Agriculture kind of have the ability to be proactive and put something like this out and start a program?
I'm not terribly familiar with the ins and outs of how it came about. I do know that it was a work that was involved the USDA, Natural Resources Conservation Service, the Department of Agriculture, Soil and Water Conservation Districts. So they kind of all work together to develop this one program.
And so once you are certified, then you have this protection from any future regulations, and you can put this nice sign up at the end of your driveway.
Yep. What else we got here? We mentioned the financial incentives. You really are ensuring that your farm is maintaining its productivity for the next generation as well by, knowing that you're doing all that you can to maintain that system.
I can't help but believe that you aren't going to have a lot of interest in this program and most of the counties where agriculture is involved in Minnesota.
We certainly hope so. It's really a great way for farmers to be proactive and promote their good land stewardship beliefs.
And you mentioned too that if you do find some deficiencies, some issues, that pot of money, cost share funding under the EQIP, there's a whole lot of different practices that are involved in that, whether it's waterways or sediment basins, even some help in there with the, controlling runoff from feedlots and things. I mean, it's pretty expansive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very extensive, and it includes things you might not have thought about before, like the pollinator habitat. You can apply for funds to establish some pollinator habitat now. Uh,
No, go ahead.
oh well, so yeah, the different options are many. Buffer strips, you name it.
Oh, I think we have a listener on the line that maybe wants to comment on this. Are you there? How about now? Are you there?
Correct.
So are you referring to the buffer initiative then? Okay, what's your question?
Landowners, are they going to be included or not?
Private landowners, are we going to be included in the buffer initiative? No, I thought I heard something that Governor Dayton kind of backed down from all private ditches, but we were going to get to buffers here pretty soon. But as long as
ready for it?
Yeah, go right ahead, Steve.
I did want to talk a little bit about buffers because it is such a hot button issue, and it's kind of evolving week by week. New information is changing regularly, and one of the biggest changes that we just heard last week was in the original proposal or the law, it was being looked at that private ditches that drain into a public system would be required to have the 1 rod or 16.5 foot buffer requirement. Last week that was withdrawn, and so now it looks like that, well, it'll require some legislative action, but it sounds like that's not going to be part of the new rule.
So does that answer your question?
Holding the water back from other farmers. I comment.
Oh, yeah, I know there are a lot of private ditches that well, they don't get cleaned and maintained quite like the public ditches.
Correct.
I know I was talking about this issue with Warren Formal with the Minnesota Agriculture Water Resource Center. I think maybe we were over at the Minnesota Ag Expo, and I was trying to figure out if the private ditch in my farm was included, and I was looking at the map, and then we were having a discussion, and when they dug my private ditch, the dirt that they threw away from the ditch, well, it kind of created a dam next to the rest of the field. And I said, so how can water run into there? And so Warren Formal was saying, well, maybe if you just have a 4-foot grass strip that's there, which is there now, and then you just make sure you don't till the bean ground if it's next to the ditch, or if it's corn stalks that you have a lot of residue. He said you might already be doing your part.
You might be. There is a part in this law that requires or offers an alternate practice, and so I think we're going to be able to have some flexibility to work with landowners in some situations like that.
And my first thought is, well, gee, this is using common sense.
Yeah.
And Warren said each individual county is going to have a fair amount of authority, and guess what? Even if private ditches aren't included, the right thing to do, and it's not that hard for me to do, I'm going to do it anyway.
That's great. And one of the things that we really encourage for those that aren't going to have a need to hay those areas is to consider something like the CRP program. Enroll in that before the requirement takes effect, and you'll be able to receive up to 15 years of payments on that acreage.
Yeah. The continuous CRP is a great program. We've got a grass waterway in the farm where I grew up. I mean, we're so flat down there and nothing is highly erodible, but yet when we get that heavy rain, 2, 3, 4 inches, it would all come down through, and it just made you sick when you saw it, and then you'd see a little bit of a gully there. And when I was growing up, there was kind of a grass waterway there, you'd kind of till around it. But Dad got it signed up in the continuous CRP, and I don't know if it's 66.5 feet wide. At any rate, this 160 acres took 3.2 acres.
Yeah, it doesn't add up real fast. But the program, I should mention, the soil and water conservation districts are the ones that are charged with carrying out the law. through the state rule process. That's how it's kind of been set up, is we're the first ones to make sure that the law is upheld. So we also want to assist landowners in getting into compliance. So we don't want to carry the stick and force people into this.
That's the whole idea. Let's work together and see what
Yep.
we can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are going to have to be done, but we want to be as proactive as we can. And so far, the feedback that we've received has been pretty positive. I mean, there's always going to be a few folks that are not real excited about this, but it seems like most farmers understand that the importance of having these buffer areas in place.
Now, if it is a public ditch, or, I mean, a lot of farmers have, rivers running and creeks running through their land, so that's going to be how many feet then? The 50 feet?
Yeah, it's kind of complicated. The DNR is required to have some maps developed by the end of June that will designate those areas, whether it be a 50-foot requirement or a 16.5. And we don't have those maps yet, but based on the old maps, we have a pretty good idea of the areas that are going to be required to have the buffers.
And maybe it's easy for me because I have a private ditch, and well, I can do the right thing, and gee, that's kind of how I've been doing it already anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be losing, 50 feet on each side of a waterway, so I can see where some landowners are concerned, because you're going to have to maintain that, but you can't farm it. You're going to be paying real estate taxes on it yet.
Right. And, unless you enroll it into CRP, you can still hay it. Grazing maybe at a very limited amount, but maintaining grass or perennial cover is the main goal of those areas.
And if you can get it into continuous CRP before, 17 or 18?
November of 2017 for most areas, yeah.
Then you'd have a pretty good rental rate on it, at least to be generating something in return, rather than having all the expenses and nothing you can do with it. I can see where landowners were a little concerned about how this is all going to be rolled out.
And it's very possible that there could be changes at the state legislature to come that before the final law takes effect. So you never know if we do see some changes or not.
Well, I was up at the Minnesota Farmers Union and the Minnesota Farm Bureau annual meeting. There was a lot of discussion there about, okay, this is all well and good, but if I can't do anything with this land, is the state going to come and help with the real estate taxes, or give me a break on the real estate taxes? And then, well, that's local schools and county budgets, and you can see where it gets kind of complicated.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when all at once the law was passed if we thought about all these unintended consequences, but then again, that's why we have a legislature that can come back and tweak things as needed.
Right, and I have a feeling that there might be some funds available for either putting easements on these acres, or some type of long-term payment. But again, that's just hypothetical. I don't know if that's going to materialize at this point.
But the nice solution is, if you're going to have to do that 50-foot buffer, see if you can get it into continuous CRP, and at least then you know that you would be getting some revenue from it to cover the cost.
Yeah, and folks that are interested in going that route, we would encourage them to look into that as soon as possible, because we expect a high amount of interest in signing up into CRP, so we don't want to have a situation where there's too much workload to get it all done.
Because it takes time to get everything lined up, and you have to do the dirt work, so to speak, actually on the land, and getting it squared off. And
yep.
That's going to be interesting too. I assume that maybe you can square things off, because a lot of rivers and creeks, how they meander, and it would just be nice if you could have enough and just have a square end of your field. Or
yeah, and the law does allow for some of that to happen. It requires on the public or protected waters a 50-foot minimum, or excuse me, a 50-foot average, but you can have a 30-foot minimum. So that means that some areas you maybe are a little bit less, but to make up for that 30 feet, you might have a wider area. and that may allow you to square up your field a little better.
So you'd have a square end or
Yep.
something like that to make it easier to farm then.
Sure.
Well, as we go forward, Steve, I think you guys are going to be very busy at all soil and water conservation districts with this new program on Minnesota Agricultural Water Quality Certification Program and implementing the buffer initiative.
We expect it's going to take a lot of staff time to implement this new rule. However, fortunately, the state has offered us some funding to assist with those efforts. So, we do have the resources available to carry that out.
And each county does kind of have some ability to use their own discretion, but that isn't like the district director. It's more the board, right? The elected board that will kind of interpret how things go, or if maybe Jerry doesn't agree with what Steve said, that would go to the board and you can have a discussion about it.
I think the way that it's supposed to work is at some time before the maps are finalized, the soil and water district supervisors have the ability to add additional areas to be required for buffers if they so choose.
If they saw an area in their county that was particularly troublesome, maybe.
Yeah, if it seems to make sense to do so, they have that ability. I'm not saying that they're going to, but that is an option.
Well, we only have about a minute and a half left, Steve. Is there something else you'd like to mention, maybe that we haven't?
Well, I guess the take-home is we don't have all the answers yet on the buffer program, but like I said, it's kind of an evolving topic, and if you do have questions, certainly contact your soil and water district for more information.
Or the board supervisors that you see at coffee somewhere.
Yes.
That's their job to talk about it and say, here's what we're thinking. What do you think? How this should be interpreted.
That's how the whole grassroots conservation is supposed to go. Your neighbor is one of those supervisors, and talk to those guys about this issue.
And if you'd like to get your certification under the Minnesota Agriculture Water Quality Certification Program, start with your local soil and water conservation district, and you'll then get them lined up with some of the paperwork that they need to do. And that specialist, would you say 3 in the southeastern region, right?
Yes. And fortunately, there's a couple of those guys that are retired NRCS employees.
So they have lots of experience.
They know their stuff.
Yeah, good. Thanks for coming by, Steve, and
Thanks
for letting me have the big scoop. And now I'll only charge you 1 donut instead of 1 for me and 1 for John.
That sounds good.
He sacrificed his donut. Never mind. Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Steve Pahs is the District Director for the Rice County Soil and Water Conservation District. 7 degrees now in the Faribault area and clear skies. Those winds still blowing out of the northwest.